purification. Mary has been required to wait at least 40 days before she presents herself for purification in the temple. I want to start here. To be made pure and to be brought back into the community of Israel. Currently, between the time of the birth of Jesus and these 40 days, Mary has been, as it were, excluded from society. It's part of their ritual, their religious practice, that a woman for 40 days after the birth of her firstborn son is unclean and can't participate in the life of the community. It seems unusual to us, but it was very much part of their sacrificial system. And they needed to be made whole again, to be brought into the whole community. And this is a theme all the way through, particularly in Jesus' ministry, about wholeness and healing, bringing somebody back into community. To be purified is to become right, to be made whole once more, to have your rightful identity sourced again in God. Not to be kept away from God's purposes, but to be brought into the community of God. To be defined by God's purposes, not by social or religious or societal expectations. And this was the revolution that Jesus brought. Not just in fulfilling the law and the requirements of the law, but in doing away with the barriers that kept people away from being pure and having their sins or their brokenness and having those things keep them away from God. Jesus makes us pure. It's interesting, isn't it? Here's Mary who has given birth to the Messiah, and yet in the world's eyes she is still unclean. But Jesus makes us fit for community. He makes us fit for relationship with God and with one another. In Mark's Gospel, we read this account of Jesus really breaking this taboo and breaking this one of these taboos and this in the system where he is gathered at a meal, at a party really, offered by one of the religious leaders, and a woman comes in, a woman of ill repute, a woman, maybe a prostitute, but certainly someone who is definitely ostracized from society by her action, her activity. And she kneels at Jesus' feet and she breaks an alabaster jar of perfume and she's weeping. And the tears are falling and Jesus says to her, be free from the constraints on your life. Later on as well, in Mark chapter 5, Jesus is en route to heal a young child. And the woman with the issue of blood reaches out to Jesus and says to herself, if only I touch his cloak, then I will become clean. But in touching his cloak, he becomes ritually unclean. And yet she does this, and Jesus knows that the power has left him, and he turns around and says, who touched me? And she comes forward, and Jesus says to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Your faith and your reaching out to me as your leader, as your Lord, as your healer, has brought you back into community. Yes, wholeness in your body, but into community again. Become whole, become part. Go in peace, he says. Be freed from your suffering. Yes, your suffering in your body, but also your suffering that has ostracized you from being in community. Jesus makes us pure. Dedication. Joseph was waiting to dedicate the boy to God. In keeping with the religious law of his time, in remembrance of God rescuing the people from Egypt, the firstborn of every family and every livestock was to be dedicated to God as God's, as belonging to God. Remember the 10th plague? That horrendous, horrific way that Pharaoh's heart needed to be broken to release the people of God. And the angel came, and the firstborn of every family in Egypt, except those whom the angel passed over, the Israelite people, the people of God. The firstborn of every family died in the 10th plague. And to mark this point, every firstborn in Israel was to be dedicated and devoted to God. What does it mean to be dedicated to God? To be devoted is to know your place in the world, to know your place in the cosmos, your relationship, who we are, our role in life, our purpose in life. Not maybe who we are, but whose we are, who owns us, whom to whom are we devoted or dedicated? To know that we are loved with an undying and everlasting love, a love that would send Jesus to earth to die on a cross. And in Jesus' ministry, we read particularly in John's Gospel this wonderful relationship that Jesus brokered for us. In Jesus' relationship with the Father, he offered us that belonging, that dedication to the Father. In John 10, Jesus answered his critics, "I tell you, but you do not believe. The works I do in my Father's name testify about me, but you do not believe because you are not my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life and they shall never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all. I and the Father are one. That you might know and understand that the Father is in me and I in the Father." But they tried to grasp him and seize him and kill him because he was declaring a relationship with God that had never been experienced before. A dedication and a devotion, and an ownership, a friendship, a relationship with God. And Jesus prayed in John 17, "I have given them the glory that you have given me, that they may be one as we are one." As Jesus' relationship is with the Father, so we are offered this relationship of devotion, of dedication to God. Consolation. Simeon was waiting for the consolation of Israel. The pain and the hurt of being the people of God seems to be a theme of the Hebrew people. The suffering and the burden of being called God's people, to be set aside. And even in this time of Jesus' birth, the Roman persecution and occupation of the land and the restrictions on their practice and there's this pain and this mourning and this lament. We read it in the Psalms and we see it in the Old Testament, this yearning to be connected and to have God redeem and restore the glory of Israel, for God to be in their midst. This waiting and this longing, this palpable sense of knowing that things aren't right. God, will you come to Israel now? Will you console this pain and this mourning that we are in? To mourn is to recognize that things aren't as they should be. A love that has been lost, hearts that have been melted by pain and sadness, and souls that ache for comfort. Jesus teaches that those who mourn will be blessed, for they will be comforted. And those who recognize their true need of forgiveness and wholeness found in Jesus true comfort through healing and peace. Reflecting on that passage again from Luke chapter 7, the woman who comes and breaks that alabaster jar over Jesus' feet, in her mourning, her recognition that things aren't right and she needs and wants to be put right. There was a woman in that town who had lived a sinful life, learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisees' home. She came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. And as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. And she wiped them with her hair and kissed them and poured perfume on them. This deep sense of mourning, this coming to Jesus and finding in Jesus the comfort, the consolation that Simeon was looking for. Redemption. Anna, it seems here, is aware and maybe part of this group of people who are looking for and waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. What is redemption? Well, it's rescue. It's to be caught up and taken away, to be gathered in and protected by a strong and powerful leader, a prophet, a priest, or a king, or maybe even God's self, and someone to lead them, someone to lead the people of Israel, someone to lead from Jerusalem, for Jerusalem, someone on whom the Lord's favor rested, someone like Moses, someone like David, someone like Aaron, somebody connected to God, someone powerful, motivating, someone holy, someone powerful. To be redeemed is to be rescued from a powerful oppression, to be set free by the intervention of someone greater, someone mighty, someone loving who will guide and lead and mediate between people and their God. In Luke chapter 19, we see Jesus presenting himself to Jerusalem, riding in on a colt. And so they brought the colt to Jesus. They threw their cloaks over the animal and put Jesus on it. And as he went along, the people spread their cloaks on the road. And when he came near the place where the road goes down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully praising God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Jesus himself, being presented in the temple as a baby, later was presented to Jerusalem as their king, their prophet, and their priest. So what have we been waiting for? What are you waiting for? Are you waiting to be purified, to become right, to become whole once more, to have your rightful identity sourced in God, to be defined by God's purposes, not by social or religious or societal expectations? Are you waiting to be dedicated to God? To know your place in the world, in the cosmos, to know that you have a role and a purpose, to know that you are loved with an undying and everlasting love? Are you waiting in mourning? Are you waiting for comfort? To recognize that things aren't as they should be. With a broken heart, a love that has been lost, and a heart that melts with sadness, and the soul that aches for comfort. Are you waiting to be redeemed? To be rescued from a powerful opposition, a powerful possession, a powerful constraint in your life? To be set free by the intervention of someone mighty, someone strong, someone powerful and yet loving, someone who will guide and lead you and mediate between you and God? What are you waiting for today? Come to Jesus, the child who was presented in the temple. Come to Jesus who ministered here on earth. Come to Jesus who died on the cross for each of us. Find your purity, your devotion, your comfort, and your rescue. If the Son shall set you free, you shall be free indeed. I'd like to conclude just with 3 minutes of music, just to help us reflect on these words and these thoughts about the things that we're waiting for. And in Simeon, when Simeon prays his prayer and his declaration, the Latin term for it is the Nunc Dimittis. It's part of the prayer book. It's part of our church history for years and years and years, and has been placed in music and in various ways. And I want to play a piece of music that was written, the words of the Nunc Dimittis written to music. And I will play them now. Let's spend a few minutes listening to these sounds.